Hey guys, just wanted to put together a little video on how I do the front pads on the 6-pot Brembos for a 2018 Plus STI. To start with, I'll jack up the car just slightly to get some weight off of the wheel. If you can see down there, I don't think you can see it because the jack point for these is there's straight bar on the pinch weld, a notch, and then a straight bar, another notch, and then it goes forward again. You want to put it right where that the short beam is between the two notches. That's the safest place to jack it. Once you get it partially up, I use an impact just to get them started. This is nice. This one, if you hold the trigger, it'll go until it's loose and then it stops. So at that point, I'll stop and do it by hand. These are 5 19mm lug bolts or lug nuts. I do it by hand just to make sure that the lug bolts don't end up stripping out. Subarus are pretty known for having crappy lug bolts. They can easily strip out, especially if they're over tightened, which dealerships love to over tighten them. So I recommend at least doing it by hand for the second part. Using an impact can be nice in the first part just to get them loose. I've heard that sometimes if you don't use an impact right away, you can strip them out. I know that was the case with the 22 WRXs. A lot of dealerships were way over tightening them, and then when people would use a hand tools to get it off, they would end up stripping it out. So I recommend impact at first, and then you can unbolt it the rest of the way by hand. All right, so once you get the wheel off, I have mine over there. This is what you're gonna look like. There's 2 pins, one right there and one right there, and then there's a bolt that goes across it. You'll loosen it from this end. This is just like a lock side. I always take off the top pin first, so you'll push it that way. Once it's out, you can pull the clip off, and then you can either do the bottom one or the bolt. It doesn't matter after that. You'll need to take all of them off to get past that. So this bolt, if we come over to my tools, this is a 13mm, so that's what you're gonna use to get that off. And then to push the pins out, I just have a smaller, old, crappy screwdriver. So I'll push the pins out with this and a hammer, and then you'll have access to the pads. All right, so I took the top pin out, and then this can just kind of unhook like that. I'm using power stop brakes, so they come with new hardware. I don't think you technically need to replace it, but I'm going to because I have some fresh hardware and this is looking pretty crusty. After that, just this one right here, and then you'll unbolt, like I said, this side of this, and you'll have access to the pads. All right, so I got the bottom pin out, and then this just slides out like this. So as you can see, there's a hole over there, and then this is the nut that comes out of it. So you'll just want to save these. You'll be reusing these regardless of if you got a hardware kit, unless for some reason you got new bolts with it, which would be weird. But now we have access to the pads. You may be wondering why in the world I'm replacing them, because they're basically brand new. Unfortunately, Tire Rack lists the Hawk HPS 5.0s as they'll fit on here, but they fit, but they clunk. Every time you brake in the opposite direction you last braked, like if you were backing up and you stopped, and then you went forward and you stopped, when you went forward it would click. There's just a lot of wiggle room in these, so I got some power stops and they seem to fit a whole lot better since I already did the other side. So here are my new pads. These look a lot closer to what the OEMs did. They have this like backing plate on them, which the Hawks did not. And as you can see, what I meant by them shifting, I mean, it was just awful. It made this horrible clicking noise. And clearly this wasn't right. I know it wasn't hurting anything. I read on a lot of forums that people run these for, autocross days or whatever, but mine's a daily driver, so we won't be dealing with clicking noises and all that kind of stuff. So I would avoid those HPS ones, and I would find something else. I know there's a lot of other good options besides Hawk. So yeah, like I said, I went with power stop, so that's what we'll be putting on here in just a minute. It's real easy, just as easy as taking them apart. So, and then for the hardware that comes in the kit, I always grease it. This is just some silicone ceramic extreme brake parts lubricant. Had it forever. We use it with our pin-based brakes. I just put a real light coating on the pins, And then whatever's left over, I'll put right where the pins are gonna ride. So right there and there. And so, yeah, these are way better than those old crusty ones I was using. I did notice they don't have the notch in them, like with the old ones. So if we look at the old ones, they have a skinnier section right there. I assume it doesn't do anything or matter, but just something I noticed difference between them. So, all right, so here is the new pads installed. I can already tell that they fit a whole lot better than the old Hawk ones did. We'll see how they hold up compared to the Hawks. I know that the Hawks are pretty popular for autocross days and all that kind of stuff, but I don't do any of that right now. This is just strictly a daily driver, so hopefully it might even have a little bit less dust. Those Hawks had a lot of dust to them, especially compared to what the stock pads were like, so I guess we'll see. I'm going to start out with, I always put the bottom pin in first, and then I'll put the hardware. I'll do the bolt, and then the top pin. That's the easiest order for me to do it in. I forgot to do the bolt before, and that's it's not fun. You got to push the pins back out, and that is by far my least favorite part of this whole thing. So bottom pin, put the hardware in, do the bolt across, and then you'll have to push down on the top part to get the last pin in. Again, you push it in from this side, so don't try and push it in that way. There's a slot over here that has some locking hardware built into it. So make sure you push it in across and you should be all good. One thing I did want to mention is this bolt right here has two flat sides on it. There's a flat side here and then a flat side here. The rest of it's round. You have to make sure that you get the flat side or one of the flat sides on this side of the brakes over here. Otherwise it'll just spin. You don't want to tighten it, you'll mess up your caliper. So just make sure this is in the right orientation when you tighten down that bolt back there, and you should be all good. So this is what your finished product is going to look like. Nice and tight. It's going to have those push pins pushed all the way in. To do that, I just used an extension. I used this side of it, and then I hammer it with the hammer. So that seems to work out pretty good. Once that's all tightened up, you can go ahead and get your wheel back on and go bed them in. I'm not going to go through the bedding process, but there's tons of videos on how to do that online. I know Scooby Freak has one, and I definitely recommend checking his videos out. He makes some of the highest quality STI videos. Well, I guess he did. Now he has an M3, so he's out of the STI world, but he has a whole wealth of knowledge to share with his videos. So go check him out if you haven't, and if you have other questions on an STI, he has an answer for it. So hope this video helped you out with your 6-pot Brembos, and we'll see you guys next time.